Welcome to this Java Break with Basis. Today's topic is present your BBX data in GUI in an instant. We're going to look specifically at how we can utilize the grid functionality and the rapid application development tool Barista to present your data, be it from a character-based app or a GUI app, in a very short space of time, thereby enhancing the functionality of your business application. My name is Nico Spence. I'm the Chairman and CEO of Basis International, and I'll be joined today by Sam Velopis, who will be showing us some of the intricacies and some of the additional functionality that you get for free with the Basis tools. Let's kick off. Our case study today is Bisco Industries, one of our self-programming end-user customers that operates a system that is full of feature and full of function, but many years old. Lots of character-based, lots of customization, lots of heavy modifications. This is what the old customer buyer lookup screen looks like. So a lot of information presented to us, but not in a grid type fashion. So very difficult to navigate through, very difficult to get to the real core information that you might be wanting. This is what the new customer buyer lookup screen looks like. So a standard grid implementation, GUI. The user actually has functionality that allows him to do filters. So up here on the right, he can filter the information that he wants. He could select columns to sort by and have subsidiary columns within the initial column sort, and also change the format of the information that's there, and then deliver the output of the resultant filtered information into an Excel spreadsheet or into a printed format or into a Google Doc format. So let's have a look at the case study. We're going to cover in today's agenda the challenge. We'll talk about the choices, the theory, go GUI in stages, work smarter, not harder. We'll talk about the execution. Seeing is believing. Let's see it in action. And next, we'll talk about the benefits of the solution. And then finally, we'll talk about the product cost. How did we get there? And we'll take your questions. So let's first talk to the challenge. As I mentioned earlier, this is a stable, reliable, probably a 500 plus user character user interface application. Heavily modified over the years and customized very specifically to suit the needs of this long-standing user of Business Basic software. There are older data structures, lots of sort files, and there's a definite need to modernize. The user interface is old and inefficient and very complex, especially for newcomers to the company. There's a very high cost of maintenance, specifically in the area of sort files that might get out of sync. So opportunity to leverage the more modern, multi-keyed, and unlimited key sequences available with the latest versions of Basis technology. Let's have a look at what the old system looked like. So as we might expect, here's a character-based screen. We have a ton of options that we can go into. Let's do an initial sign-in. There's a default screen we're presented with. Right, here's the piece we're interested in. We want to look up buyers by company name. So we can do a partial name. That's pretty useful. Nice functionality. But then we get presented with this sort of complex screen. So in a tabular format rather than a grid format. And we can scroll through it, but we really can't go beyond that initial selection. So if we really wanted to see somebody who started with a different name, we don't have that option. We also can't look it up by buyer. So sorting in a different sequence is not easily accessible to us. Of course, we could go and write that code, but again, the 80 column by 25 line screen is not well suited. Now, this is a very complex system, as we've just seen here, a ton of options that we could be running. Comprehensive, but not exactly user-friendly. So what were the choices? Buy a new package and adapt the company and or the package to the company's needs. Or convert the application to GUI with Basis tools. And there were two choices within that selection. One, do a big bang approach, confirm all the requirements and the current functionality, rewrite it all. Of course, very high risk involved in this approach, or the approach of buying a new package and adapting either the company or the package to the result. Instead, the choice was made to go through a stepwise approach, focus on the important components, get some early wins, and really minimize the risk. So what's the theory? Stepwise with BBJ and Barista. First, make the application BBJ compliant and Barista ready. What does that mean? Well, The only real differences between Pro 5 code and BBJ code is we've added additional keyword functionality. So Running through the pro5_keyword utility ensures that if there are any new reserved words we've added to the language, that they're not being used by the Pro5 app. In terms of complexity, not dissimilar to the move that you might have made in the past from BBX3 to BBX4. Then, to make the application Barista aware or Barista ready, we needed to define a data dictionary. And we have a multiplicity of tools, and there are other Java breaks that will talk about that step and how easy it is to get to that step from existing IO list or string template definitions of your data files. And then we needed to make sure to test the code in BBJ, ensure that there weren't any incompatibilities when we went to the run stage. And then we wanted to show a proof of concept to management. We wanted to implement a trivial Barista customer lookup from within the character user interface. So how did Bisco and Basis go about this? Firstly, we used Barista for the stepwise GUI development, giving us the minimum amount of effort and delivering the maximum amount of value. The reality is that the Bisco internal development team was already overtasked, and as I mentioned earlier, doing a fair amount of maintenance that hopefully we would relieve once we started moving to the new system. So in this scenario, we leveraged Basis's professional services knowledge, and Bisco contracted for the prototype to management and for the initial porting work to be done by Basis Professional Services. And the goal is that once the initial functionality is there and is in place, Bisco would take up the reins and once again do any future development. Let's look at the Barista version. Here we are in the Barista screen, and we have an option on the menu to launch the standard character-based interface. So there it is, but we also have the option of running a different version of the program, and here we have one we call Z menu, and we'll see it's a subset of the previous menu because a lot of these options will now be handled by the user himself. And so we've got a little menu front end. When we click on it, we'd go straight into the Barista query screen. So here's a grid with all the information that we might expect. We've got some underlined hyperlinked options where you can drill down into the subsidiary information, and we can scroll through it looking for the specific information that we wish. And then once selected, we return to the program the customer required with the latest Basis toolset. Let's see how much code we actually had to write to create that query definition using the Barista Data Dictionary based Rapid Application Development tool. So here we are in Barista Development, and we're going to go along and select the query definition. We need to give it a query ID. In this case, we'll just give it a simple name, bis_cust_buyer X, and we need to give it a description, customer buyer lookup. We need to associate it with the table. This is where we would have defined the data dictionary for the standard customer file in Bisco. We're going to check a few of the defaults. One of them is to allow output to dock out and copying to the clipboard. We'll give it a company ID and product ID. This is an ability for you to copy protect or protect your intellectual property. In this case, we're using the default, which is not to use any copy protection. And now we're going to generate the columns from that data dictionary definition of the customer file. It's giving us the list of all the fields on that table, and we're going to select a subset of them. We'll use the standard windowing control-click options to select the fields that we want: custom ID, name, city, zip, and then key to it is the salesman code that we're looking for, salesman's initials. We'll select that, and you'll notice down at the bottom it's also given us the salesman name. Because there's a link between the salesman initials and the salesman file, Barista knows that and has provided that for us. However, we don't actually want that, so we're going to delete that column from the result set. But there are additional fields that we do want from other tables. Now we could do the lookup here, or in this case I happen to know what they are, so we're going to look up the buyer information. After all, we're looking for buyer information by customer. So there's a buyer number, and we'll give it a column header name. And you'll notice along this we're making it user selectable. We can control whether the user can select these columns or not. And then there's a name also in that same table, BIS buyer. And we'll save that information away, and then we'll go across the option to set the column sequence. So we can actually determine what order these columns are provided to us on the grid. We can move them up or down, etc. And then we can generate this default SQL. So we've got a selection from the BIS customer file, and we're doing a left join on the buyer file. But in actual fact, we don't want the left join. We want to get, this is a sort of 0 to n relationship. There may be no buyers by customer, or there may be a multitude of buyers by customer. So we're going to select the outer join. And then one other point we'll see is that Barista has tried to determine for us what the linkage is between the two. So is there a relationship between the two? Let's try to guess at the buyer number. But in fact, is no relationship, so we'll take that clause out. So we can modify the SQL, and this SQL, for example, could be a call to a stored procedure where we have no data dictionary, just merely getting the column results. So we'll save that, and we can test the query, and there's our result. Let's just resize that a little bit so we can see it on the same screen. And there it is. We see the information displayed to us. We know that the query works. We can now make that available to our application. Let's have a look at the code that is used to call this query. So here are a couple of snippets of code. On the top we have the simple call to zmenu.bbj with a return value. And here we'll just break out and show the value as we saw when we ran the code. And here's an excerpt of the code in zmenu.bbj. We're setting a group namespace to be able to store the value of their return value, this RET val $. And then we're doing a simple S call to the bax launch task.bbj. That's the task that can be launched from outside of Barista, external launching. And then we're going to pass that value back into the namespace variable. At the end, we'll pick up that namespace value and assign it to ret val $. So a very simple set of code, not particularly complex, and that's the only change we have to make to our older character or GUI application code. Next, let's look at the execution. Let's consider the deployment. Our interim deployment is to keep the Pro5 clients in place and introduce BBJ clients in a phased fashion, utilizing the shared file access capability of BBJ to share the same locking mechanism as your Pro5 clients. And that means the BBJ clients connect into the exact same database as the Pro5 clients. There's no change to the structure. So using the same Pro5 database. And then finally, we'll eliminate Pro5 from the equation entirely and merely have BBJ clients, being a mix of CUI and GUI and the BBJ database, which will give us additional functionality. And for further reference, I recommend you go and look at the Java break library for more info on benefits you'd gain from moving to the BBJ database. So let's talk about the current status. The current status is that Bisco has 300 users running on BBJ via shared file access. The bulk of the users then have been shifted to BBJ, with some users still running in Pro5. Here's what the interim deployment looks like. The server is a Sun server with both Pro5 and BBJ installed. And then they have, at the application layer, they have load balanced Citrix terminal servers. At the client level, there are simple Wise, NeoWare, thin clients. And then, as I said, running a mix of BBJ and some of them still running Pro5 character-based sessions. The final deployment will see the removal of Pro5 entirely, and then the same load balanced Citrix terminal servers will be driving the thin client sessions running BBJ GUI or BBJ character based. So we've spoken about how we'll be removing terminal emulation from the equation in the final deployment. But let's step back a minute and talk about the Barista query. We looked at this simple example, but let's talk about some of the other functionality that is available. We can access multiple tables, as we saw, but also virtual tables. We can use store procedures to create virtual tables, and that means we can write standard BBX code to gain access to our data that maybe is not well suited to a data dictionary or relational definition. We can apply filters to the result set as we saw. We can also create calculated columns, and we can total those columns. We can sort on multiple columns, and we can do a simple output of the query to a report, faxing it, emailing it, etc. So let's have a look at a bit more of an extended functionality that's available with the new query definition system. So let me hand over to Sam Velopis to take us through that.
Let's review the features of the new query definition system. First, you'll notice hyperlinks are now underlined. So to display the master record for a highlighted or hyperlinked piece of data, simply click and the form will be displayed. Multiple columns can now be sorted. By clicking on a column and then holding Shift and clicking on another column, you'll now get a secondary sort based on the primary and the secondary sorting. To reverse the sorting on any of the columns, simply hold Shift, press it again. To break the multiple sorting, simply select on a single column without holding the Shift key. You can sort on any defined column except for calculations. You can also sort on the secondary description pulled from the joined tables. Filtering for the queries is now in line. To access filters, press the Filters button, and the filter panel will display at the bottom half of the query form. The filter panel is made up of three sections. The Filter Wizard, which lets you build a filter step by step. The Save Filter, which lets you save filter criteria under a specific name for later use. And then the Column Filter Grid, where you can manually enter filter information. For instance, I can enter equal BAR. Salesperson equal to BAR. You'll notice when I hit Enter, it automatically does the filtering. I can also do it from this point. I can clear all. I can say equal to BAR, press Add. It adds it to the grid and redoes the query. At this point, I can also save the filter, BAR Customers, and press Save. You'll notice it's added to the filter drop-down list as one of my options. So if I exit this query and re-enter it at a later time, I have my BAR customer filter with all the criteria automatically loaded. Another filter addition is the contained in, where I can list a series of values. I can say is contained in, and let's select multiple salespersons. Is contained in BAR, add, CAU, add. The in statement is another way of saying equal to ABC or DEF. The new query system also contains the same powerful dock-out features available in the current Barista inquiry system. Right-clicking on the grid and selecting Print will send this query in its current state to the dock-out system. From here, we can create any number of output types. The document output selection form will let us create PDF, CSV, text, XLS, and XML files, formatted or unformatted. On disk, we can send emails, faxes, upload to Google Docs, and launch the target document once the processing is completed. We can also send the document directly to a Google Doc repository. Next, we'll review some additional document output options available in the new query system. As you've previously seen, a right-click on the grid and selecting Print will send this query in its current state to the document output system. From there, using the document output selection form, you can create any number of file types based on the source document. We've also got the ability to directly create the document type without going through the document output system. Right-click on the grid, select Export Records, and select one of the direct types available. In this case, we'll select Tab Delimited Text. Barista generates the tabbed delimited text file and immediately launches the application associated with a .txt file. Selecting a .csv file will launch a comma-separated text file in the application associated with a .csv. In this case, Microsoft Excel. However, you'll notice the columns are not correctly aligned and the column types are incorrect. In that case, we can use a direct to XLS option. This creates a native spreadsheet file that is launched directly by the application associated with your .xls extension. You'll notice the difference here. We've now got columns with the correct width and the correct format. This spreadsheet can be modified, saved, and then accessed at any time through the document inquiry system. If you'll notice, it's document 1010475. We can close Excel, launch the Barista document inquiry system, right-click on document 1010475, open document, and it will launch the application associated with the .xls file using the file that we've created. This type of direct output linking allows you to bypass any of the normal doc out steps and lets you quickly generate the type of output file required.
Let's look at the benefits that Bisco gained from this approach. A much simpler interface for the user, much more user-friendly. Navigation is in the user's hands. The user can filter the data, and the user can do additional sorting. Very little development effort or time is required on the part of the application developers. And the benefits to the users extend to having multiple output types and formats, the ability to have hard copy, to fax the output, to email it, or to archive it, and in various formats, XLS, CVS, text, PDF, for example. So the question you may be asking yourself is, how do I get Barista and how do I take advantage of this option? Well, for existing licenses, you generally need to purchase Barista. Or you can choose to convert to the rental promo option that we have available. For new licenses, you can do rental, software as a service, or you could go to the cloud offering with bbjcloud.com, for example, as a third party. Or if you were considering utilizing Basis's ERP building block solution from add-on software, they have several choices again, a cloud offering, a rental, or an outright purchase. Let's talk more about the Barista Promotion. So new Barista applications normally require a license upgrade if you're not already current. That might incur a reinstatement fee. And if you're not on the Enterprise Edition, you'll need to do an edition exchange from Standard to Enterprise. And then you'll need to purchase Barista. With the Barista Promotion, Basis covers the reinstatement fees if there are any, the edition exchange from Standard to Enterprise, and the cost of Barista. All you pay for is the Basis license upgrade, which is not applicable if you are on SAM, and you pay the SAM plan for Barista and the Enterprise Edition. Effectively, you move into a renewable license, but you only pay the SAM portion thereof. There's no upfront cost. It's a very inexpensive rental option. Some other choices, which wouldn't have been applicable to Bisco, but if you are in a Microsoft Windows environment, you may be running Visual Pro 5, in which case you also have the choice to excall the BBJ or Barista code from within Visual Pro 5. Some resources to look at in that environment. There are a couple of Advantage Magazine articles that talk to it. And also there's a Java break that talks about mixing and matching Pro 5 and BBJ and talks more about the excall functionality. Here are a couple of screenshots of the Advantage Magazine articles. So in summary today, what have we covered? We've looked at the challenge faced by Bisco. We looked at the choices they had. We looked at the theory of the choice that they chose. We looked at the execution. We looked at the benefits that they gained. And we looked at the product costs of making that move. Let's take your questions.